ni Secretary Balisacan, we have to do a cost analysis. Baka naman yung binibigay natin na tulong ma-diminish dahil nga doon sa hirap naman na kunin. One thing for sure, pinag-aaralan, hindi tayo sumusuko doon para ma-achieve rin natin na matulungan yung mga producers natin na magsasaka. Pero pangalawa, tulad ng lagi sinasabi ng Presidente, ang tulong hindi dapat pinahihirapan ng ating mga kababayan. So doon naman that's where we draw the line. Meaning, kapag alam namin na lalo lang mahihirapan yung ating mga benepisyaryo, hindi natin itutuloy. Kanina parang nabanggit yun na kung parang nasabi ng Pangulo, I told the President we will continue studying, but the President also said na baka logistically mahirapan. So nandun muna tayo. We're not saying no. Studies are ongoing. Pero taking into account the logistics na kailangan para hindi mahirapan ang ating mga kababayan.
Sir, update lang po dun sa paglilinis natin ng 4-piece po, sir.
Kanina matagal na talakayan yan. Yung paglilinis tapos na kami. Konting-konti na lang. Nagsimula yan nung panahon ni Secretary Erwin Tulfo. Actually, gusto ko linawin na hindi nyo nililinis yung 4-piece. Ang nililinis natin nililinis yung 4-piece at yung listahanan. Yung listahanan. Kanina na pag-usapan yan, sinimula ni Secretary Erwin Tulfo yung paglilinis, tinuloy namin nung pag-assume ko, at tapos na tayo. Pero kanina, napag-usapan nga yung maaring ways forward. Kasi bakit? Yung listahanan na ginagamit natin is 2019 pa. So alam natin na bahagi nun nangyari bago nag-COVID, yung balanse nun nangyari after COVID. So maaring nag-iba na at alam rin natin nag-iba na ang muka ng kahirapan. Maaari yung mga dating hindi mahirap dahil sa pandemya, nag-adjust ang buhay, naging mahirap. And to the same degree, kung 2019 pa yun, it's been 5 years since. So alam natin dun sa batas kasi every 4 years dapat ginagawa namin yan. Kaya lang lumabas yung CBMS law, yung Community-Based Monitoring System. Di ba, ang CBMS ay isang napaka-effective na tool kung saan ang mga local government units sa tulong ng PSA ang magagawa ng survey or saturation to make the new list. Doon sa batas kasi pinagbawalan na ang lahat ng ahensya katulad ng DSWD gumawa ng panibagong listahan pa. Isa na lang tayo, yung CBMS. Kanina, ang good news, bagamat hindi ako taga-PSA, sabi nga ng Presidente, kailangan sa mabilis na papanahon, matapos na tong CBMS. At inassure naman ng PSA, nila Yusek Dennis Mapa, na the moment ma-release yung budget na naka-allocate para sa kanila, by end of the year, tapos sila, by January, may bago na kaming listahan. Kasi pwede natin, kanina yung analogy nga, linis kami ng linis ng listahanan, pero matatandaan nyo kung luma nililinis mo, maaring may porsyento ng populasyon na wala talaga doon sa listahan. So kahit anong linis mo, wala siya doon. Kasi it's an old list. It's due for creating of a new list, and that's CBMS. The major highlight kanina is the President re-emphasized, correct, no, Daphne, so many times that the CBMS dapat gawin na. At sabi naman ng NEDA at ng DBM, the funds are being processed, released, they can conduct that. Bakit maganda yung CBMS? Yung CBMS is mas granular siya, all the way to the individual. Marami yung tanong doon, yung food insecurity, at hindi lang DSWD ang makikigamit ng listahan na yon. Lahat ng ahensya na may anti-poverty programs, or kahit nga wag anti-poverty, if you want to look at other dynamics sa pamilya, sa individual, makikita natin sa CBMS. Ako naging mayor ako and I've used the CBMS before. It's a very effective tool kasi granular siya. Napaka-micro nung kanyang sinusukat. And dahil LGU-driven to, together with PSA, pwede niyong i-update ng mas mabilis. Kasi alam mo yung lugar mo, alam mo, biglang nagkaroon ng bagong industriya doon. Pwede ka magpatakbo ng CBMS kaagad kasi baka naman nawala na yung mahihirap doon. Or let's say, nagkaroon ng isang disaster sa isang lugar, nawalan ng trabaho yung mga tao, yung dating may trabaho, nawalan ng trabaho dahil nasira, then you can do another CBMS to capture the newer picture. Mas responsive siya, mas micro at mas granular.
Sir, quick follow-up lang po dun sa recommendation ng DA. Pinag-aaralan po ba natin? Possible po ba na within this year po matapos po yung pag-aaral natin?
Sa mabilis na panahon. Nowadays, lahat naman is mabilis nating ginagawa. Kung pwede, gagawin. Kapag hindi pwede, we'll make sure to report back kung bakit hindi pwede.
Okay. Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror. Melvin, please pass the mic. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, sir. Tatanong ko lang po, sir, kung na-mention po nila kanina na parang pinag-aaralan na mas maging responsive yung benefits na binibigay ng DSWD. So magkakaroon po ba tayo may proposal po ba na yung mga benefits na a-adjust yung amount depending sa inflation?
Yes, actually, without going into so much details, kasi nga it's subject for further calculations with PSA and NEDA, yan yung gist ng meeting kaninang umaga, na masigurado na naka-price index, whether it's cost of living or price of the essential baskets. We were tasked to work with PSA and NEDA to find the best index to use to make sure na ang tulong pinansyal, whether the 4-piece grants or I guess all other social protection that we do, make sure namin na hindi siya napag-iiwanan kung nagkaroon ng spikes like inflation. That was the gist of the meeting kanina. Kasi nga, bahagi ng thrust ng ating Pangulo ay masigurado na ang social protection hindi lang ginagawa, kundi angkop sa panahon, angkop sa pangangailangan. It's not only about being timely, but it's also being responsive and making sure it's the right amount that you need. Kasi with, alam naman natin na inflation hits the bottom 30 of our population more. Kanina nga we were talking about the data na in 2023, the bottom 30s inflation was 6.7, meaning 0.7 higher than the regular 6 that maari ang non-poor ay nararamdaman. So that by itself is already something that to look at. Inflation always hits the bottom 30 the hardest. So that's why nga the President instructed DSWD to work with PSA and NEDA to come up with the right mechanisms to protect the value of our grants.
Bale, sir, as ko lang, may timeline po ba para dun sa development ng index-based na
Well,
system?
the ASAP. In the President's term naman lahat is everything has to be done now. Diba sa Bagong Pilipinas, hindi pinag-uumaga ang trabaho. So, in fact, after this, I'm going to go back to the office, run our numbers with our data crunchers, pass it on to PSA. Hopefully, we can incorporate each other's ideas in the fastest possible time.
Okay. Eden Santos.
Secretary, tanong ko lang po, how much yung exact amount ng 4-piece? And I heard every 2 months po ibinibigay ito sa mga beneficiaries ng 4-piece.
How much? Iba-iba yan. The health grant is fixed at 700. Tapos yung education grant niya moves. Depende kung meron kang maximum of 3 children, depending which grade you are. Pagka nasa elementary, 300 pesos yan. Kapag nasa high school, 500 pesos. Kapag ka nasa senior high school, 700 pesos. So, maximum of 3, yan yung bracketing niya. So, you get the education grant na gumagalaw, depende ano ang grade ng iyong anak. You get the fixed health grant at 700 pesos, and then you get that 600 pesos rice assistance. Ang maximum for a child of 3 normally hovers at around 3,400 pesos. Maximum na yun.
Or monthly?
No, every 2 months ang increment nun. No.
So since pababa po yung trend ng ating inflation, does it mean ba na mababawasan yung natatanggap na for ayuda ng ating mga beneficiaries?
No, never ka nagbabawas. It's more of making sure na yung value niya hindi nagdi-diminish. Siyempre, may base kasi yan sa batas naman eh. Hindi mo naman pwedeng biglang sabihin. Remember, the 4-piece law is a law. The 4-piece program is a law. Naka-fix doon. Hanggang dito yung binibigay. Ang gusto ng Pangulo, katulad sa iba nating mga social protection program, meron siyang self-indexing. Kung biglang nag-spike ang inflation, dapat, kasi pag may inflation, yung piso mo, maaring hindi na piso ang halaga. Nakakatanggap ka ng piso, pero hindi na ka nakakabili ng piso worth of goods. So gusto lang niya na forward-looking, hindi na dapat yung magpapaalam pa kung kanino para magpalit. Kung hindi, sana ma-incorporate sa batas the self-adjusting mechanism. And it will require a lot of thinking. Hindi lang to do-it-your-own assignment ng DSWD, kundi nandun yung NEDA at yung PSA, which they both concurred. Sabi nga nila, we'll pass them on our proposal.
Thank you po, Secretary.
Jean Mangaluz, Inquirer.net.
Hi, Sec. So actually, you mentioned it kanina na the amount of the cash aid is fixed in the law. So when will you push Congress to?
All of those will come tie together. Sabi nga ng Pangulo kanina, first, compute first. alamin nyo mabuti anong index ang gusto nyong gamitin. Then number 2, sabi niya, if it's okay with the economic managers and he looks at it and it's okay with him, we can now incorporate it in the 4Ps law. Hopefully, we're hoping na we get to introduce it in a LEDAC, but give us time to compute first. Ayaw namin na magkamali yung index na gagamitin. Kasi there are plenty of index from what we heard this morning from our economic team. There's the based on consumer price index, di ba? Meron rin yung essential basket cost. Maraming ways to do it. But the more important thrust there is make it responsive and make it protect its value against being diminished by shocks like inflation.
Quick follow-up. We know that inflation has eased recently, but prices are still quite high. So what's the possibility of providing an inflation package, especially to the poorest of the poor?
Okay. The 4Ps is really meant to protect our 4.4 million poorest of the poor. That's the main flagship program of the country. This is the solution to it, making sure nga that protektahan muna natin yung flagship kasi yun yung pinaka-nangangailangan eh. But doesn't necessarily mean we'll stop there. For instance, the assistance to individuals in crisis situation o yung AICS is governed, wala pa siyang law, is governed by a memo circular. So the department is also now tasked to look into the values of what we give out. Baka yung medical assistance namin na cap, dahil medical bills are also inflationary, di ba? We want to make sure that all the products and services that can be affected by inflation, yung menu namin sa AICS pag-aaralan rin namin baka hindi na kasi sapat yung value ng binibigay namin.
Okay, wait. Tuesday New, DZBB.
Hi, sir. Yung AKAP program, sir, as of now, medyo may pag-question yung ilang senador natin. Ano po ang lagay ba ngayon ng AKAP program?
Una, nagpapasalamat ako sa ating mga mambabatas na nagtatanong kasi it gives us a chance to clarify. Wala pa ni isang sentavo ng AKAP na nagagamit. The whole appropriation is intact because the department is still crafting the guidelines. If you look at the special provision ng AKAP sa batas, it's meant for our minimum wage earners to protect as an anti-inflation mechanism. Maganda yung programa. Importante lang mahubog namin na maayos ang guidelines para talagang maging faithful siya sa mandato ng batas na ibinigay sa kanya.
Ang isa sa pag-question doon, sir, bakit daw po may budget na kaagad ni wala pa pala daw mechanism, wala pang IRR, yung program?
Kami sa departamento, nire-respeto, bilang dati ring mambabatas, nire-respeto namin ang prerogatiba ng ating Congress. When I say Congress, it's a whole, the lower house and the upper house, to introduce amendments to the budget. Alam nyo, just as a side story, sometime October, before even the whole talk about AKAP happened, I personally, together with some members of our team sa DSWD, met Yusek Mapa of PSA because he's a known poverty expert. Kasi matagal ng pag-aaral sa departamento namin na kailangan meron tayong near poor or tawag namin near poor pero yan yung minimum wage earners natin na programa kasi etong mga minimum wage earners natin, isang shock lang sa pamilya. May namatay, may nagkasakit, inflation. Yung may hindi inaasang pagkakataon, they're so vulnerable na pwede silang mag-spiral pabalik sa kahirapan. Remember, sa mandate ng DSWD, it's the poor, the marginalized, the vulnerable. So we have always sought in DSWD to expand the definition of vulnerable to include our near poor. And our poverty experts like si Yusek Mapa has always been advocating that. So as early as October, gusto na namin yan. So it was a very welcomed addition to our budget. Nung natapos yung bicameral conference, nandun na siya. We were about to propose it hopefully this year, but naunahan na kami. So we will make sure that we use every single centavo of that to its most faithful fulfillment of its mandate, which is near poor or minimum wage earners, anti-inflation mechanism. Now, yung tanong mo, bakit nauna yung budget bago yung guidelines? Again, the power of the purse is with the legislative. We submit a proposal, but based on their wisdom, because they do a lot of public hearings, a lot of committee hearings, sila mismo nakita nila yung value ng paglagay nun sa budget namin as an amendment. And that's also, again, the part of the power of the purse, to amend what we submit. Also, this is not the first. Apparently, I checked in our records a couple of years ago, even before I got there, even before this administration, merong mga instances na nag-introduce rin ng legislature ng panibagong program. This one was a program for women, protection of women, with a 10 million na entry, na ang tawag doon sa acronym niya, nasa budget pa rin namin ngayon, SWEMC. It's more meant for women protection. Ganun din nangyari. Inintroduced through the legislature as an amendment because the need for social protection for women and teenage mothers. Dalawa yun women and teenage mothers. And then kami na lang gumawa ng guidelines. So there's nothing peculiar as long as we abide by the special provision. Remember, the line item that of AKAP has a special provision to it. Nilagyan pa nila ng parameter. So we have to make sure that whatever guideline we do, nakakasunod doon sa parameter na nilagay nila.
Okay, Alvin Baltasar, PBS.
Secretary, good morning po. Doon sa AKAP lang, mukhang sa Congress wala naman kayong problema tungkol doon sa programa yan. Mukhang sa Senate lang yata. Hindi ba naiipit ng DSWD para sa...
Ako, I've always said this. Matagal na namin gusto yan sa departamento. And if I am invited in any of the chambers, whether Congress or the Senate, I will gladly explain the rationale why we like a program for the near poor. Gusto namin ipaliwanag kung bakit mahalaga magkaroon ng ganitong klaseng ayuda para sa ating mga minimum wage earners, sa mga sales lady, sa mga kahero sa mall, sa mga janitors, sa mga security guard. Sila yung nagbabayad ng buwis pero kadalasan nga lahat ng programa namin sa aming departamento nakatuon sa mas mahihirap pa. Pero sila yung tumutulong sa ating ekonomiya pero sa oras ng kanilang pangangailangan, saan sila kakapit? Ang gobyerno kailangan responsive. And palagay ko panahon na para mabigyan sila ng atensyon. Kaya ulitin ko ulit, welcome na welcome sa DSWD yung paglagay ng AKAP sa aming budget. Sisiguraduhin namin na huhubog kami ng isang guideline na faithful o na paninindigan niya yung special provision na para nilagay ng Kongreso.
Secretary, follow up lang sana doon sa 4-piece program. Sa record po ng ahensya ninyo, ilan na ba yung mga nabawa sa poverty level because of the 4-piece program?
Again, you cannot do a direct attribution. Ang paglaban sa kahirapan, hindi siya isang programa lamang, kung hindi lahat yan. Kasama dyan ang edukasyon, paglikha ng trabaho para may hanap buhay sila. So we cannot attribute na nabawasan ng... Kasi di ba last year parang I remember the year-end 1% reduction on poverty, but we cannot solely claim na kami lang ang gumawa nun, kundi all of government approach yun. But what's more important to us is the amount of graduates from the 4-piece program. As of this date, from February 2024, close to 700,000 na of the 4.4 have graduated. Kasama na dyan yung mga gumanda yung antas ng pamumuhay, yung mga umabot na sa 7-year mark. Pero mayorya doon sa 700,000, mga 65% nun, ay upon our evaluation of our social workers, nakita nilang self-sufficient na. Hindi ibig sabihin na pwede na naming bitawan, kaya nga nandyan yung, kasi magiging, yeah, exactly, yan yung next mechanism for them. Na kung bigla na naman nagkaroon ng dangers of vulnerability, programs like the AKAP can prevent them from spiraling down to poverty. Imagine mo, pinagpundaran natin ng 7 taon yung tao makaahon sa kahirapan. Naangat mo, ito yung poverty line, nakatungtong lang siya slightly, visually, tignan, di ba? Tapos biglang may nangyari lang. Balik na naman siya doon sa ilalim, di sayang yung pinundar nating lahat. So you need these support crutches, tawag ko sa nila, parang saklay, na sa oras ng pangangailangan, hindi sila mahulog pabalik sa kahirapan. Or else this becomes a vicious cycle. Number 2, let's not, alam nyo, ang 4-piece is the flagship anti-poverty program of the government for years. But we also have to look at its main goal. Ang una niyang goal talaga is putulin ang kahirapang na isasalin mula sa isang henerasyon patungo sa pangalawang henerasyon. Bakit ko sinabi yun? Kaya kung titignan niyo yung condition niya, dapat yung anak mo na sa paaralan. Hindi mo makukuha yung grant mo kapag hindi niya tinapos yung mula daycare hanggang sa senior high school. That's precisely why pag susukatin nyo kaagad si 4Ps ngayon, marami mga ekonomista at anti-poverty expert nagsasabi, hindi pa napapanahon. Pero tignan natin a couple more years kung nabali niya talaga yung anti-generational poverty, intergenerational poverty. Pero we're already seeing signs of success. Meron tayong mga success stories na sa social media namin yan, yung mga nakatapos na yung anak, naging valedictorian na ng batch nila, naging inhinero, then sila ngayon kumakayod para sa kanilang pamilya para hindi maulit na sila yung nagpapaaral sa kanilang mga kapatid kasi ayaw na nila mahulog ulit sa kahirapan.
Secretary, you mentioned that breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty, and also today you explored the idea of including first 1,000 days. Maybe it's time to share the importance of nutrition from conception and what role it plays in terms of development and.
Isa sa, Daphne, that's a very good question. We spent a long time talking about that this morning. Sa bottom 30 kasi, ibig sabihin yung 30%, yung pinakamahirap na mga kababayan, very prevalent pa rin ang stunting. So ang tanong pabalik, di ba nasa 4Ps nga sila, bakit? Ang sagot namin kasi doon, napansin namin na dahil yung health grant natin fix 700, walang insentibo sa kanila na magparehistro pag nabubuntis sila sa health center. Walang monitoring for their children na 0 to 2. Kasi kahit na isang anak mo, dalawa anak mo, tatlo anak mo, 700 pesos pa rin yung matatanggap mo. It's fixed. Unlike sa education grant, it's a variable. Kung tatlo yung anak mo at nasa school at iba-ibang antas, iba-iba yung value. So ang isa sa mga panukala namin is, we keep the health grant. Panukala lamang to. Ayoko naman ma-taken out of context. We keep the health value, the health grant value at 700. We keep the meaning, when I say keep, based on that automatic baseline indexing. But the new component doon is we might want to introduce, sabi ko sa Pangulo, a first 1,000 day grant kung saan ang mga buntis hanggang may anak ng 2-year-old, may panibago silang grant that only lasts until matapos sila doon sa life stage na yon. Para may insentibo sa kanila to look for yung tawag namin health-seeking behaviors. Ibig sabihin, mapipilitan sila pumunta sa health center, magparehistro kasi buntis sila. Kumuha ng prenatal care, postnatal care, postpartum treatments, pagdating ng 0 to 2, yung immunization. May data kasi kami pinakita kanina na yung immunization mababa at it's only at 18% for our 4Ps beneficiaries. Kasi nga, kumbaga, pag malayo na yung lugar na tinitirahan mo, nasa bundok ka, nasa isla ka, luluwas ka na malayo, magastos para sa'yo eh. Pero if we suddenly introduce a first 1,000 day grant to defray the cost of commuting to your health center, maring ma-encourage silang pumunta sa mga health center. But it will only be for the subset of 4Ps na may nagbubuntis o nagpapasuso or 0 to 2 yung anak mo. So hanggang dun lang muna tayo. Then after 12 months, let's say wala na yun, mawawala yung grant na yun rin. It's something being studied. At bakit sila? Kasi nga sila yung pinakamahirap at pinag-aaralan natin itong panukalan to. Pinopost namin sa Pangulo. The President seemed receptive to it, but again, he wants us to work with NEDA and PSA to sharpen the idea some more.
Okay. Melvin Gascon, Philippine Daily Inquirer.
Napag-usapan po ninyo sa briefing po kanina, sectoral meeting, sir, yung AKAP. Did the President give any instructions?
We did
on
not
how
talk
this
about it kanina. We did not.
So,
Melvin, to put it bluntly, there's nothing yet to talk about because the guidelines are being crafted. Diba? Parang I think we have to wait for the guidelines to come out first before we can actually do a full-blown discussion on AKAP.
Hindi po nabanggit ng Pangulo na this could be a possible...
No, because we were really focused on the indexing of financial assistance to inflation. We were focused on the first 1,000 days. We were focused on the 4Ps actually.
Just a follow-up, sir. If you like AKAP so much, why did you not put it in your net?
When I got into the department, tapos na kasi yung nasubmit na yung Tier 2. I was very new then. And I don't claim to know all the right answers. So January 31 ako dumating. Nagsasubmit na kami ng Tier 2 by mga Feb. In fact, at that time, Melvin, di ko nga alam ano ang Tier 2 eh. marunong ako umamin. I worked in government for a long time but in different branches. I came from the local government and the legislature. Hindi ko alam yung tier 2. So our bureaucrats were submitting tier 2. In fact, if you look at our tier 2, marami doon wala pa yung mga prioridad ko personally that I wanted to push. But sometime October, when I settled down, you can fact check me on this, call USEC Mapa. I did a listening tour in the department. I sought out former bureaucrats of the department that retired. One of them is former Undersecretary Flor Villar, a known social worker who spent years in the department but retired even before I got there. She used to run the policy group of the department. So I sought her out to talk about social protection, and she said in our meeting, I'm glad that you're looking at the poor, but Secretary, there's a running policy paper in the department or a running policy idea in the department to start looking at the near poor. So after that talk, wrote it down, sometime October, I called USEC Mapa, kasi he's a known poverty expert, and asked him. So October, hinuhubog ko na yung idea with the real hopes of this year. Sana mapasok ko, but nandiyan na eh. So I can tell from my smile that it's a welcome addition to the department's budget. And the Congress has already done its part. It's up to us now to make sure that it's implemented properly.
Last question.
Who among the congressmen did you talk to about AKAP, sir?
Sila naglagay eh. I had casual conversation but nothing formal. Ang formal discussions ko are with the Undersecretary Mapa. He did a full-blown briefing on near poor for us on how they should be deciled from the lowest to the highest. Kasi marami, di ba? And would you know also, Melvin, that officially, there is no definition of near poor. Kaya nga ang nilagay doon sa Congress is minimum wage. Kasi di ba, if let's say your minimum wage, I had a lengthy discussion on this. Let's say it runs around at 12,000 something. Ano ba, lagay na natin round of 12,500. What about 12,501? Diba? Trying to box that concept is quite difficult. That's why it's taking us time to define minimum wage. Sa law naman, hindi naman nila linagay near poor. Nilagay nila minimum wage, low income individuals, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry we don't have any more time for questions right now. This concludes our press briefing. Thank you so much, Secretary Rex, for briefing us on the Marcos administration's social protection and anti-poverty programs. And maraming salamat, Malacanang Press Corps.